Brain damage, 2-minute warning for parents. Chapter 3, Destructive Crash by Marcia and Kim Jenkins. Son, brother, husband, dad, grandfather, friend, neighbor, coach, coworker, caring person. This is who Mike was. How do all these personalities get lost in depression and alcohol? How do they become scary, unpredictable, and toxic? Just the sound of his voice would make us tremble. What awful news would be shared today? Then there was the rare occasion when small windows of the past open, only narrowly, and we'd see the little boy who fell in love with sports. If it had anything to do with a ball, he was all in. My son Mike started playing youth football in the early 1970s. He was a natural and assigned the duties of quarterback. He led teams to championship games. Of course, there were bumps and bruises. The occasional ring of the bell. Oh, yes, his brain. You're fine. Shake it off. Go get him. Football players don't cry. My words, my actions. I lived to watch him play. What kind of mother was I? If I had only known about brain injuries, I wouldn't be sharing all of this with you. The first time I know that Mike suffered a brain injury was when he dove into the shallow end of the community pool. A lifeguard saved him, unconscious from the water. He awoke with a headache and nausea. The doctor said, "He'll be fine. Just wake him periodically in the night." End of the story. Or was it just the beginning? He played every football season in junior high and high school except one, when he wrecked his mini bike and tore up his foot. But maybe he had hit his head on the way down. Hmm. When Mike started his football career at Warren Central High School in Indianapolis, I was over the moon. He was playing for my alma mater. By now, his position on the team had shifted from quarterback to tight end. Day after day, week after week, through summer camp and all through the regular season, he gave it his all. Mike would complain about having a crappy flu. He had headaches, dizziness, and would vomit. What do you think that crappy flu was all about? One concussion, another concussion. The beginning of the darkness. His light was so bright it blinded me to what he had begun, the addiction to alcohol. We had no idea. Shame on us. Friday nights were filled with cheers, screams from the bleachers from Mom, Dad, and his girlfriend Kim. So it went to the final game. We dreaded to see it come. What would life be without football? As the final pass was thrown in the pouring rain, it was intended for Mike. The ball was intercepted. I stood there in shock. Just like that, it was over. Mike lay face down in the end zone for what seemed like forever. He got up in the now silent stadium, took his helmet off for the last time, and walked the length of the field with his head down. Life went on. Mike asked Kim to marry him. On the day of their wedding, he developed one of his many headaches, but this one was different. It was so bad that his brother Rick almost had to carry him to the shower. Mike was almost 20 minutes late to his wedding, but it was still beautiful. It came and went, but the headache stayed for a year. The doctor called it a cluster migraine with no relief until the sunset. It probably is just stress, new wife and new responsibilities, the doctor reasoned. Now we ask ourselves, was it the beginning of his brain trauma journey? The 1990s were life enjoyed to its fullest. Mike and Kim became parents to two amazing sons, Kyle and Nick. There were days filled with work and evenings and weekends packed with coaching all the boys' sports from football to baseball to soccer. But the addiction to alcohol began weaving a web of confusion and disconnect. As the years went by, the journey became so hard. Mike worked diligently to hide the addiction, giving ways to lies and irresponsible behavior. It was strange, as Mike always cared about people and what mattered. One of the first big changes I saw was his lack of respect for Kim. He'd speak to her in a way no one should speak to someone they loved. When we confronted him, he would say nothing was wrong with his behavior. This was not him. Mike came to hate holidays. He would say to Kim, "Why can't we have fun like everyone else?" The answer was because we never knew who we would be if we were to join in the fun. It was better to just stay home, and so the isolation continued. Our son Rick said it was like Mike was building walls around himself. One Memorial Day, he spoke of suicide for the first time and went into rehab for a short period. When he got out, he went to meetings, and one time Kim went with him. When the meeting was set to start, the counselor said someone smelled of alcohol. They were going to do a breathalyzer on everyone unless the person who had been drinking was willing to speak up. Kim was in total shock when Mike admitted it was him. They were asked to leave the meeting. The depression increased and his self esteem floundered. He often asked Kim why she stayed, saying he wasn't worthy of her love, but her support continued to be unwavering. He always said she deserved someone better than him. We always believed he would one day get help and come back to us. Just seeing his name on the caller ID would make me sick to my stomach. The tornado of addiction to alcohol blew powerful and destructive. During the times we thought Mike was working a 12-step program, his ability to hide drinking came to a crushing reality. He told Kim he was going to a meeting, but he sat in his car drinking. He drank so much he couldn't control his blue Mustang. Blocks from the house, he careened into a ditch, hit a concrete driveway, and totaled his car. Mike suffered a broken back, and when the nurse came in to say his blood alcohol content was 5 times the legal limit, we were shocked and devastated. He talked to us as if he had never drank a drop. That was normal now. After much pressure, he agreed to get help again. He had a great counselor, and they really clicked. We thought this was finally it. It wasn't, and his disappointment was profound. Kim would hold him while he cried and shared his disappointment in himself. He'd point to his head and say, "Something isn't right in here. Why can't I do this? What is wrong with me?" The family was completely falling apart. Kim became very sick, stricken with meningitis and the West Nile virus. I took Mike to see her at the hospital and brought him home. The next night, he didn't answer the phone. I found him unconscious on the floor, unable to wake him. After he finally came to, I convinced him to go back in for treatment. He called Kim from the intake area saying, "It will be different this time. I know, babe." He so wanted that to be true. Of course, it was only for a while. Again, disappointment and self hatred. In November 2010, Mike's son Kyle was having some personal issues, and his dad couldn't handle it. Kim was working upstairs at home, and when she went downstairs, she found Mike laying on the floor with a bloody slit on one wrist. Luckily, the wound wasn't bad enough to hurt him seriously, and he got stitches. Again, he went into rehab, and again, in no time, he was back to drinking again. Mike's drinking was so out of control that Kim would have to search the house, garage, and his car constantly to see if he was hiding anything. He never drank in front of Kim or the boys. He hid vodka around the house, the garage, even in the engine compartment of his car. He'd put the alcohol in water and Sprite bottles. Most people didn't know he had a drinking problem because he covered it up so well. In February 2011, Mike fell on the ice while working and slammed the back of his head on the ground. When Kim called to tell me her words, the words so many of us had heard, was that it was just a quote unquote mild concussion, no worries. The days and weeks that followed are so confusing, overwhelming, and sickening. I'm not sure those are the words to adequately express the ugliness of it all for all of us. The days and weeks that followed are so confusing, overwhelming, and sickening. I'm not sure those are the words to adequately express the ugliness of it for all of us. Mike went back to driving his semi truck for work. He tried hard to hide the physical symptoms: headaches, nausea, vomiting, dizziness, vertigo, exhaustion, confusion, etc. We made him go to the doctor. Of course, the doctor said, "Oh, you'll be fine. Take it easy. It'll go away." Sound familiar? The same message he was given as a boy. On some weekends, he could hardly make it out of bed. We were all beside ourselves with worry and frustration. No one was helping. I contacted our niece, Dawn Wilver, an Indianapolis attorney, to see if she could help find brain injury specialists. There were none to be found. We were all beside ourselves with worry and frustration. No one was helping. I contacted our niece, Dawn Wilver, an Indianapolis attorney, to see if she could help find brain injury specialists. There were none to be found. One day, Mike returned home early from work. "I just got fired," he said very calmly, almost like he was relieved. There was an emptiness to his eyes that was haunting. When you talked to him, it seemed like the words went right through him. The physical symptoms continued. The father and coach, who never missed a game, could no longer leave the house. It is now March 2011. Kim and I went to the theater for a much needed escape. When she arrived home, she found what she couldn't have expected: the remains of a father and son relationship destroyed. Mike and Nick had gone out to eat at a restaurant, and Mike got into an argument and nearly a fist fight with another guest over putting his peanut shells on the floor, which is common at this restaurant. The manager made them leave. On the drive home, Nick cried and told Mike that he had always wanted to grow up to be just like his dad, but not anymore. He told him he was nothing but an alcoholic. Mike responded like it was nothing and he didn't do anything wrong. You would have never known that Nick had said the things he did because it was like Mike didn't even hear it. In the midst of all the ugliness, a small, tiny new light came into the world. Kyle's daughter, Jada, was born. She would sleep peacefully on Mike's chest next to his heart. He called her his little JJ. It was a bond that would give Mike the joy he hadn't known for a long time. Close to Easter, we had the occasion for just the four of us, mom, dad, and our two grown boys, to go out to dinner. It was good just to be us. We actually laughed and shared family stories. Mike volunteered to drive home, but halfway there, he didn't know where we were. He had driven those same streets all his life. Someone told me to check into traumatic brain injury. I went online and there it was. Everything he had was right there. Maybe there would be hope. We coaxed him in to see the doctor, who checked him again and said he could order a CT scan. "But Mr. Jenkins," he said, "your problem is your drinking." Feeling defeated, we left, but I still had hope. On May 5th, 2011, Mike came to do some work at our home. Kim was helping out at the school's concession stand. We were away that morning, and Mike called his dad to say there was a man lying in the yard. While still on the phone, he said, "Are you okay, buddy?" Mike then said the man got up and walked down the road. To this day, I don't believe there was ever anyone there. After doing some chores for our neighbors, Mike went home and called Kim to see if she wanted him to take the turkey out of the freezer so they could cook it for Mother's Day. He asked if she needed help with the concession stand. There was nothing out of the ordinary. He sounded just fine, but something was going on in his brain. On May 5th, 2011, Mike came to do some work at our home. Kim was helping out at the school's concession stand. We were away that morning, and Mike called his dad to say there was a man lying in the yard. While still on the phone, he asked, "Are you okay, buddy?" Mike then said the man got up and walked down the road. To this day, I don't believe there was anyone there. After doing some chores for our neighbors, Mike went home and called Kim to see if she wanted him to take the turkey out of the freezer so they could cook it for Mother's Day. He asked if she needed help with the concession stand. There was nothing out of the ordinary. He sounded just fine, but something was going on in his brain. When Kim got home, she couldn't find Mike. She went to see if he was fishing in the pond behind the house, but he wasn't. She went into the master bedroom and happened to look into their closet. There, the storm had come to rest. There he was, the former light of our world, quiet, still, on his knees, hanging from the clothes rack. Kim got him down and started screaming. Kyle came running to see what was wrong. Kim called 911 while Kyle started CPR. It was 6:40 p.m. where I was, and in an unexplained tremble, I had to grab a chair. I know that was when he left. Nick attempted to get home, but the street was lined with emergency vehicles. He asked a neighbor what was going on. He was told the emergency was at his house. He doesn't remember much more after that. Kim called our son Rick to tell him the news. He arrived later, but there was nothing to be said or done. It's over. Those were the words he used as he and Chrissy came in the door at 10:40 p.m. I don't remember much after that. How do you pick up the pieces? What will the world be like without him? Then the relief comes, a peace no one should ever have to describe. It was over. No more dreading, wondering about what and when. The disease won. Early the next morning, our niece Dawn called and said, "Aunt Marcia, have you heard about the concussion study?" She told us that she had spoken to the brain bank about its CTE studies, and if Kim and the family consented, Mike's brain could be part of that work. "Oh my God, yes," was my response. Everything was arranged. Off to the brain bank went the puzzle of Mike's life after all the information was taken. The team explained it would be 6 months before we would have a conference call. The days following were filled with hope, confusion, and anxiety. In November 2011, it was time for the call. Kim, the boys and her family, Jack, Rick, and I, as well as Dawn, were all on the line. This is part of what was shared. The neuropathologist said Mike's 45-year-old brain looked like that of a 75-year-old. She reported he lost almost 25% of his brain matter. There was evidence of multiple brain injuries. There it was, the answer to all of the questions. The peace was overwhelming. If only he could have known that he was right all along. There was something wrong, something that could not be healed. Mike's light lives on in his sons and his granddaughter who knew him and says he was funny. Up to the last moments of his life, he was still doing for others, making a difference in a way he could never imagine. As you read these words, be kind to yourself and those you love, because you may never know what you don't know. He didn't make a big step onto the fields of the NFL, but in the climb of life, Mike was a winner.